Hey guys, and welcome to the Legendary Ladies podcast. And we're doing a duo episode. And for the Patreon listeners, we are a little late, more than a little late. But the reason being is actually we're planning our schedule for these upcoming weeks because I feel like there's going to be a lot of duo episodes because our schedules are so crazy. Amy actually officially announced that she is going to be in a play, so she's working on that. Morgan, you got a busy schedule going on. I just got back from vacation, and I am jet lagged.
Kat just got back from Europe. I'm just about to go to Europe.
Yeah,
We're ships passing in the night.
literally ships passing in the night. So we also figured out that A League of Their Own was officially canceled, and we're like, we've actually been trying to plan to do a pilot pod for this for a while, and this is a good excuse to do it. But it's a shame because Amy actually wanted to be on this, and it makes it seem like Amy hates sports because every single time we do a
It's so
sports.
true. The Ted Lasso episode.
But Amy might hate sports. I'm not really sure about that, but she doesn't watch Ted Lasso. That's why she wasn't on that one. But this one, she was like, "No, I want to do it." But then we were trying to figure out stuff to talk about, and this was the one that made the most sense to do this week. And she's like, "I can't be on this week, but I will. You take it for the team. Take it for the baseball team." Um,
Yeah, and one of the reasons we wanted to talk about it, especially this week, is because it's a weird situation with League of Their Own where it debuted on Amazon, it got good buzz, and then Amazon cancels it, and everybody got really mad and upset, and they talked a lot on social media, and they made a lot of buzz, and then Amazon decided to uncancel it. They're going to bring it back for a short season, and then, of course, the writer strike happened. And just recently, I guess like earlier this week, I think, or last week, Amazon came back out and was like, "LOL, JK, we're canceling it again." So it's the show so nice it got canceled twice, basically.
which is so crazy. Well, or so
It's
interestingly
very
enough, because
cruel.
it's very cruel. Abby says Amy's here in our hearts, and then Rachel said, "Yeah." So let's welcome our patrons here. New Rachel and Abby are in the comments, and you could be a patron member as well. You get to listen to our podcast live. And let me tell you, like I said, we're probably going to be filming a lot of episodes early, so you might be getting stuff two
we
months in advance if you
we're
are a
we're
Patreon
gonna be
member.
trying to bank some episodes. So yes, if you want to become a Patreon supporter and get these episodes early and be able to chat with us in live chat as we record, it's patreon.com/the legendary ladies. And we've got a bunch of different levels where you could support, and you get bonus content and pretty much all of them.
Yeah, and going back to the League of Their Own, so something that was interesting about what you were just saying was that I, for some reason, I just had a false memory. I thought it was canceled, and it was just canceled like a long time ago. I forgot it got renewed, so I was like, "Oh, wasn't this old news that it got canceled?" And then I guess in between there, it was renewed. So I was like, "Oh, that's even worse." I thought maybe the first cancellation wasn't official, and it was just like, "Oh, they have low ratings and didn't
No,
get canceled."
like
And oh no, this is even
talk
worse.
about playing with the emotions of the fans of the show where they canceled it, and then the outcry was so big they were like, "Okay, we'll bring it back for another shortened season." I don't remember if it was like a shortened season or like a movie or something like that, kind of like a
I think it was
Warrior.
a final season
I
when
think it was
I
a
saw
final
the article.
shortened season, although, like, at, like, a 8 to 10 episode first season, what is a shortened season? What is it, like, 1 episode? But yeah,
Two
they were gonna bring
episodes.
it exactly, back for a shortened season, and then they canceled it again. They canceled it for the I feel like it's too embarrassing to cancel it for a second time, like, you gotta just go through with it now at this point.
It also doesn't seem that expensive of a show. It's a show about
No,
baseball.
it really doesn't. So we'll get into this as we talk about the pilot pod and like the episode, but I've been watching a good portion of the season. It doesn't feel like a very expensive show to me unless it's they're using it all on like costumes. I saw that Abby in the chat said it was renewed for a shortened 4 episode second season, which in itself was cruel. And Rachel says 8 episodes seems to be the norm for Amazon shows. I agree, Rachel, because Wheel of Time is also I think most of their seasons are 8 episodes as well. And since they're getting through books that are like 1,000 pages a piece in those 8 episodes. There could be more episodes is what I'm saying.
A and you know what's interesting too, because when I thought about this cancellation, I was thinking about Paper Girls, and I mean that maybe
Ugh,
wasn't the most cheap show, but it's like that show got canceled too. It also was a queer show. You know what's interesting about Amazon Prime too is like how many shows do they even have? They have Wheel of Time,
I
like obviously I'm
know.
sure it's doing well. Invincible, you know, that
I've been
animation looks kind of cheap for Invincible. Not dogging Invincible, I like it, but it doesn't look that expensive.
No, no, it's I have to say, I feel like what ended up happening, Lord of the Rings show cost like $1 billion, like with a B,
Yeah.
and now if a show isn't like a hit right away, they're like, "Well, we spent all of our money on the Hobbits people show, so we don't have any money left for anything else." It kind of like to your point, it doesn't feel like Amazon has like a big show besides like Mrs. Maisel, which I think just ended. I feel like that was Amazon's biggest show.
Definitely was.
Abby
And
said,
who finished it? I didn't.
I never even got through the first season. It was everybody was good, but I never got too into it.
She's I didn't like Mrs. Like, I liked Mrs. Maisel for
Uh-huh.
like 1 through 3, and then something happened in the show, won't spoil it, but
Yeah.
she got annoying real quick, and she never really, bounced back.
Never bounced back. I heard it kind of
No.
goes off the rails in the later seasons. I saw a comment from Abby who said, for A League of Their Own, most of it was filmed in Pittsburgh, and I think we have filmed tax breaks here in Pennsylvania, so I don't think locations were super expensive.
No, it was all
Yeah.
those outfits for sure, or the baseball bats, I guess.
Yeah, Rachel says the only shows I watch on Amazon other than this one are Invincible and The Boys.
And
Yeah, I
those 2
guess
are the big ones. The
I
Boys
was
is
about to
really
say,
big.
yeah, The Boys is big. I mean, obviously the Lord of the Rings show is also big, but I
Is it
believe
aired yet, or what's going on with that? Like,
it
what?
it has aired.
It had
Um,
aired, okay.
the
This is the I'm
Mike
really
and
into Lord
I
of the Rings.
Mike and I did like a whole Lord of the Rings marathon, so we were actually pretty excited when the show came
God
on.
bless.
We made it through, I wanna say the first 2 episodes. It was, like, the narrative equivalent of, like, watching paint dry for me, like, it was one of the most boring shows I've ever seen. Now, I've heard it gets a lot better after, like, episode 2. At one point, I'll find out, but it was beautiful, like, obviously, they were burning through that money, but still, it just kinda felt like, I don't know. And then I think, like, a story came out that said that, like, only I wanna say like 35% of people who started that show, like the Lord of the Rings show, actually finished it
That's
based
pretty
on their, like,
sad.
stats. So, I don't know, maybe all that money wasn't the most well spent. Maybe, like, renew the shows people are liking that aren't $1 billion.
Sure, yeah. No, I think that would be a smart way to do it. But yeah, let's get into A League of Their Own. So funny enough, I rewatched it obviously for this podcast, but I actually watched the show or the pilot, but I only got halfway through the pilot, and then I realized that when I went back, I was like, oh man, I only had 10 minutes of this and I didn't finish
You never
it.
finish it.
'Cause I think it
That's
got
so
canceled
funny.
when I was, like, in between it, so I was just
Oh,
like it literally
no.
got canceled, like, when I was watching the episode, so I'm like, I don't know if this is worth it." And, so I guess, like, going into the pilot, so go into just our initial thoughts.
Yeah.
What's interesting about this show, I like sports narratives a lot. I mean, we talked about Ted Lasso, I talked about what I thought I knew about softball.
And it turned out to be wildly off.
Yeah, not much, and there is professional softball out there, just not
Now we
here,
know
is
this.
what we learned. But I like sports stories, and I think a good sports story is always just a good character story, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
driven by the sport, but it's always a good character story. But sometimes you want a little sports in there too, because I was watching Moneyball, right? Like, I watched Moneyball, and I think that's a really good balance of, sports, but also like character slash doing something else with the sport. Because Moneyball is about like how to create a roster, and it's not really like about a baseball player. It's about like how to make a cheat team do well.
Yeah, like,
And
based on, like, statistics. It was kind of like,
yeah,
at the time, people weren't really doing like putting their teams together that way. And this team, the guy who started to kind of think about, oh hey, like what if we looked at the stats of here and there, they were essentially just trying to like stretch their dollar. Like they were kind
Right.
of like a cheap team. They didn't have a ton of money. So like what's the best who are the best players that we can get based on like looking at a bunch of different sports stats. I did like I saw them I never read the book, but I did see the Brad Pitt movie. I thought it was really well done.
I love the movie, and I saw it on a plane. That's how I saw it recently because I had a long
Nice.
plane ride, and it was there. And I like sports movies. So, but what I liked about that is that you did get to see him play baseball every once in a while, and I think that's kind of the thing I didn't love about this pilot is that this movie you really didn't have. It's not about baseball at all. Almost, there's not one moment here where I'm like, oh, I feel like this is a baseball show. It's just like these girls, they're gonna be on a baseball team. But even the moment where, and I like her character a lot. What's her name? The black girl who is a
Oh,
good pitcher,
Max.
Max. I wanted to say Max, but then I was like, is it Charlie? Uh,
There
um,
the Charlie is, the Abby Jacobson's,
there you
husband
go.
on the show.
So I knew there was a Charlie too, but it was her character. Like I was like, oh, cool, she's a cool pitcher. But you only get to see the one scene. You don't. There's never a moment where she talks about her love for pitching. It's more about her love for like doing the thing that her mom tells her not to do. And I was like, there. I wanted a moment where it's like this love for baseball. And I've never seen the original movie, which
Okay, so
maybe I should go into.
that was gonna
Yeah,
be, one of my big questions is, like, what sort of IP baggage are you bringing into the show? Because,
and
so
no IP baggage.
you
No,
haven't seen the original,
I know
League of
of
Their
it.
Own?
I know who's in it. I've seen like
Cat, y
ideas of
you
it.
have to if you like sports
Uh
movies, you have to watch A League of Their Own. It's incredible. Obviously, you've heard that there is no crying in baseball line,
I
but,
have.
it's like a stacked cast. Tom Hanks is great. It's like one
Rosie
of the I
O'Donnell
think
is
it's
in it, right?
Rosie Madonna for some reason is in it. Mad Okay, Mike is shocked. Mike was so shocked he came out of the other room to stand and look at me that Cat hasn't Cat hasn't watched
I
A
know,
League
I
of
really
Their Own.
should. Well, I wanted to do an episode of it for this podcast
Yeah, yeah.
because I was like, "Oh, that'd be fun if we do a pilot pod and then we'll do the movie." I honestly, there's no excuse. I really should have seen the movie. It's not one that I'm just like, "Oh man, I've been avoiding it." It's just like
Sometimes
haven't
we
seen it.
sometimes we recommend to you things that we know you aren't gonna like
Yeah, no, this
fantasy
I would like.
series, but I truly do think that you would love A League of Their Own. It's such a
Me
good
too.
movie. But yeah, it was interesting for me because I obviously I watched that movie so much when I was like little growing up, but I haven't seen it in years and years. So like going into the pilot, it wasn't like it was like fresh in my mind where I was like, where's the Marla Hooch character or whatever? Like I barely remember what the character names or anything like that from the movie. Like I vaguely remember there were two that were sisters and stuff like that. So I went into this kind of feeling
Oh, so they're all based on the movie.
I th-
The characters are too?
I don't think that the characters in this are based on the movie at all.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that there might be some like archetype kind of characters,
Oh,
like
they're
the glamorous
sisters
one.
in this
Um,
one.
are there? I think
Yeah, I think I thought there were.
I don't think
I thought
so. So
the Spanish
yeah,
characters.
I think so for me the pilot podness of this is a little confusing because after watching the pilot, I was like, "Oh, that was good." And I just rolled
You
into
watched more.
episode
That's
2.
good.
So, we're on to like episode 7 now. So
Oh, so
to
you're almost done.
Oh, and we watched it really quickly actually, which is surprising for us because we have a hard time with like hour-long, especially if like this is more like a dramedy. It's like funny and dramatic. And normally I'm just like, have that be a half an hour, but I didn't mind the length so much here. But yes, the two Spanish speakers in the show that was probably confusing in the pilot, but
Okay, so they're
it's
not
just like there's a
siblings.
girl who's there who only speaks Spanish and can barely speak English. And then there's another girl who like primarily speaks English but can speak Spanish. So
Yeah.
so she talks to the other one, and, like, the other one is kind of like a little sister character to her,
Yeah,
but
and
they
you don't
aren't
see
actually
them that much
sisters.
in the pilot, so that's probably why I thought that, where I was like, "Oh, like, I don't know. I don't know what I
Yeah,
was thinking, but
I
when you
see
said
I
sisters, I'm like, "They're
Yeah,
sisters."
the sisters. I see, Abby in the chat says, "No, pretty much all the characters are different. There are some similarities and plot points through the season, but not much the same." Yeah, I think one of the big things, and spoiler alert a little bit for the season, but, obviously the League of Their Own movie, Tom Hanks is a big part of that. He's like a big character, whereas in the show, like the male pitching coach who's played by the male coach who's played by like Nick Offerman, he's I mean, he's
Is
like a
he in the
bigger
pilot?
I don't think first off, I think you're right. I don't think he is in the pilot.
I don't think so, 'cause I'm
I think
like,
he
I would've been
comes
like Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, I think he comes in like episode 2, and he doesn't feel like like as big of a deal as it was in like the movie where like Tom Hanks's character is like a big character, whereas he's more
Mhm.
like a supporting character. But yeah, I think you're right. I don't even think he's in the first episode.
Which makes sense for the show. Like, obviously, the show is very much about, the main character and her relationship with, the one from The Good Place. It seems like that's what the
Janet
show is
from
gonna
The
be.
Good Place.
Janet from The Good Place. It seems like that's a very big part of the show is that she's, like, figuring out her identity, and she's like, "I don't wanna be married to this guy, but this girl's hot. Alright." And, like, all of them, I guess, joining a baseball team, who would know? But, yeah, no, it's an interesting pilot because there's stuff I enjoyed about it. I so interestingly enough, this is coming from me. I actually like the history aspect of it because I feel like you're so
Ooh.
used to Legends of Tomorrow, right? Or a show like that, where they like skim over, racism or homophobia. And like I think the show really plays with where it's trying, the time it was in, like it's more realistic. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So yeah, I think in that aspect, at least it was a little, it was realistic.
Yeah, I think that the show tries pretty hard to be like realistic in terms of like how tough it would have been to be a person of color, how tough it was to be a woman, how tough it was to be queer in that time period. Um even just a woman, even just like a straight white woman, like
Hmm.
they're putting them in skirts to play baseball, right? Like I don't think we got to it in the pilot, but eventually they play like baseball games, and the announcer is like just wildly sexist. So yeah, I think that the show does a good job with the time period. But I would agree with you in that like the pilot doesn't have a lot of baseball in it, yeah, for a show about baseball, like, and it really does kind of feel to me like we've talked about this a lot where like streaming pilots feel a lot different than like more traditional
Yeah.
pilots, where this didn't feel like it was supposed to be a pilot. It just felt like it was supposed to be like chapter 1, but
Right,
like
which helped you because you wanted a
it helped
chapter
me. I
2.
was like, let's go. Like, let's tear through this.
Didn't
But
help me. I didn't finish the last 10 minutes of the pilot, but not for this show, or the
yeah.
original time I watched it.
Yeah, but to be fair, yeah, it's not very piloty. Like it does kind of introduce the piloty aspects, I think, of it are like introducing the characters and like the time period, not so much the sports part of it, which is
Right.
strange because it is a sports show at its
And
core.
and it doesn't I think a good sports movie kinda tugs at your heartstring a little bit where you're like, "Oh, I feel on the edge of my seat. Are they gonna win? Are they not gonna win? Like, what's gonna happen? Does it matter?" And again, you care about the character, you care about them being an underdog. Like, honestly, even, like, a good Disney Channel original movie would do that. Like, go watch Right on Track or go figure. Like, there's even though it's Disney Channel, you're like, "Oh, I wonder if they're gonna win or not." Eddie's Million Dollar Cook Off. There's so many sports movies from Disney, and I love them all. But yeah, no, I didn't get that moment here, and I think maybe that's also a reason why maybe some people didn't continue further onto the show too. Was like maybe it. I think it was good that I was targeting a queer audience, and as a queer person, I was really excited for it. But I'm curious if it alienated people who wanted to watch both, who wanted to maybe just like watch a good queer story, but maybe wanted to watch a baseball story.
Yeah, I feel like maybe the drawback to it was that the first episode was them trying out for the team and, like, being selected for the team, and that's
Right.
in terms of what happens sports-wise in episode 1, that's it, and it feels like instead, maybe what they could have done is have that happen early in the episode and then have, like, the rest of the episode, like, the end of the episode be, like, their first game, and I feel like that would, like, pull in the sports aspect of it more because it definitely does get more sports. It's very baseball focused throughout the run of the show. It gets more
Mhm.
sporty, like, as it goes along, but yeah, can see in episode 1, literally, they try out and then they make the team, and that those are, like, the 2
Very
big
easily too.
sports things that happen, in episode 1, like, the Max character tries out or, like, wants to try out but isn't allowed because she's black, and she, like, throws the ball really well and
Right.
impressively, and then kinda storms off into her own storyline, that is, medium baseball related, I think, in episode 1, but yeah, like, that's all that happens. They try out for the team, they make the team, and then
And
that's
there's no
all.
tension about making the team, and I think that's the thing I didn't like, again, if you're gonna make it about the tryouts, cool, like, maybe some people didn't get in, but I mean, obviously, Max didn't get in, but like, they made it so she didn't get in right away, maybe,
Yeah.
like, I just feel like there just could have been more tension in that. Not
And it's
that not
Yeah, and it's
the
tough to have, like, that level of tension when, like, you aren't familiar with any of the characters, so, like, you personally don't care too much who makes it in, who doesn't, like, we know our point of view character is going to make it in, we know, like, Abby Jacobson's character is gonna make it in because she's, like, the first character we see, so, like, beyond that, we don't know who any of these other characters even are, so we wouldn't be disappointed if they didn't make it in.
Well, what's interesting too, because like going back to Moneyball, and again, I saw it recently, so I don't know if you'll remember the reference, but like one of the opening scenes with Brad Pitt in that movie is just him at a table, kind of discussing the stats and being different than the other guys, and being like, well, actually, I feel this way, and I don't even think they make it to the field until like middle of that movie, but there's something about his character where you feel like he knows baseball and it's his life. Nobody's life was baseball in this, except maybe Max, but I didn't see that in the first episode.
Yeah, I
But
think
the
they
friend loved comics, and I knew that.
The friend loves
That's
comics. Yeah, the friend loves I think they did a really good job of, like, setting up the characters, and I feel like maybe the sports took a backseat to that, especially in episode 1. I see Abby in the chat says, "I know when it first premiered, there were a ton of people review bombing it because they expected it to be more like the movie and about baseball and were upset it was queer, which is a shame."
I was definitely
Yeah,
not upset that it was gay.
no,
I was
no.
upset I didn't see
That
baseball, but I didn't,
that
I
was
didn't hate it
great.
because of that.
There could have been more baseball for sure, but the gayness was fine.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
it
actually,
made it better.
I was gonna say this is like a good opportunity, I think, to talk about the different sort of like the queer relationships and the characters and like what did you think of Carson, who is Abby Jacobson's character, and Greta, who is Janet from The Good Place. What did you think of their romance? Because, or at least maybe not romance is not the right way to say it,
Yeah.
like more like a flirtation. Because I like went back and forth on it while watching the pilot, where I was like, I don't
No
know.
tension. No
Yeah,
tension.
not a lot of tension. It's like I do sometimes feel like casting directors are like, these are 2 good actresses, um, and they're both pretty, and that's all we need, right? And it's like there really is like a level of chemistry that does make a big difference when it comes to romances because we just got done watching Heartstopper, and
Oh,
so to
yeah,
go from
yeah.
something like Heartstopper into this where I was like, I mean, the chemistry is just not comparable.
Yeah, exactly. Heartstopper is so built on those 2 characters and their chemistry, and that's literally what makes it a fluffy show. Well, it gets a little dramatic, but, like, it's mostly a fluffy show about their romance, so you're like, "Oh, wow, I really like them a lot," and you can tell that, at least in real life, that they're probably friends. And I'm not saying that these 2 actors aren't, but there's no chemistry at all or no play, and again, it's a pilot, they probably just, like, I'm trying to think of, like, good pilots where these 2 probably just met each other, but they still like, "Whoa, that's, like, really, really good." Can't think of any pilots where, like, the romance is, like,
Yeah, and,
in
like,
the
I get that
pilot.
in this pilot, they're kind of dancing around each other and they're flirting a little bit, but it's, like, a dangerous time for them to even be flirting, so, like but I feel like there should be some kind of connection, some like big chemistry that you can kind of
Even a
sense.
personal connection, even just, like, they
Yeah.
have something in common besides baseball. It's interesting because I looked up I thought maybe Max and, the main character were gonna have something, and I know she is spoiler alert, spoiler
Yeah,
alert,
yeah.
spoiler alert. I know she's queer also, like, her
It's not a
character, and
spoiler
it's
alert, like, everyone's
pretty
queer in this
obvious.
show, it's, like, one of the gayest shows I've ever seen, and this is a feature, by the way, not a bug, I love this, but, yeah, it's so funny, Mike and I, have been saying, like, pretty much for the whole season, like, I l like, every time that the Carson character and the Max character interact, I'm like, why aren't these 2 the romance? Because they have really good chemistry, even though they only interact a little bit in the pilot, I was still like, I'm more into that than I am this romance you're trying to sell me.
Yeah, because do you leave us in this cliffhanger where, like, she finds out and she's like, "I'm not gonna say anything." You're like, "Whoa, that's super interesting," and then they also, like, I feel like they just had more in their stories paralleled each other a little bit more because they're like dealing with their queerness in a different way. Like Darcy's character, she's accepted it, right? She's already like, I like being gay, but I gotta hide it. Like obviously the other character is more in the closet, and it seems like Max is a little bit more in the closet, and they're dealing with their own identity crises. I feel like that would have been more interesting to see them, and also like obviously the race commentary as well could have been really interesting. So I was just more intrigued by that relationship, and we saw so little of it.
I agree. I actually really love Rachel's comment in the chat. She says, "It feels like a happiest season kind of thing, where the couple most people like isn't the one that's canon."
So this is a thing in the fan base too, that more people like them, or
This this is a good question because I don't really know. I've just been watching it this week, but I will say,
you
like,
didn't take a deep dive into the fan base?
I
I
didn't
don't
get, like
understand.
I didn't get, like, deep into, like, Archive of Our Own or anything for this, but, no, I mean, it's something that I at least thought while watching the season was that, like, yeah, man, every time and, like, not to spoil too much for anybody who might wanna watch A League of Their Own, but, like, the Max and Carson characters do interact a little bit together, um, and every time they do, it's really nice, like, they have good chemistry, those actresses together, and, like, the characters do too, and it just like, every single time I'm like, "Ah, I mean, this would kinda be a better romance."
Yeah, no, and that's why I was really curious about a season 2. That maybe they would have went that
I
direction.
maybe. It's one of those things where again, I don't wanna spoil too much, but, and I think you can kind of tell from the pilot, but it was kind of it was interesting for me watching the season, and I'm not done yet, but you kind of
You're
expect
almost done though.
I'm almost done. You kind of expect based on, like, the fact that they're all ladies who love baseball, that eventually they'll all be on one team together, but Max's story is really sort of its own thing that sort of runs parallel to the story of the Peaches, which is the team like the women's team, baseball team. So, like, yeah, I spent a lot of it going like, "And then Max joins the team," and, no? Okay. Alright.
She doesn't even ever join the team.
Again, spoiler alert, but I'm on episode like 6 or 7, and she has not yet joined the team. And this definitely feels like one of those situations where
That's
I don't know
crazy.
if you've noticed this with some streaming shows where it feels like they take like a season to get to the point, and then like like they're like, all right, now we can begin. It's like, oh my God, I got a whole season through this. And this
I
kind of felt that way to me, where it was like in season 2, like maybe they'll all be on the same team together. It's like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like you have season 2.
Yeah, no, it's like Paper Girls, I think, was very similar in that way too, which maybe one day we'll do a pilot pod for that. Who knows? All the canceled Amazon shows, we'll
Ugh.
just do pilot pods for all the gay canceled Amazon shows. There's a laundry list, so
Paper Girls is one that still, like, actually hurts me, like, I thought that was so well done, I only read a little bit of the comic, so I don't really know how faithful
mm,
it was, but I thought that the
pretty
TV
faithful. It's
show
too faithful. Maybe that's it.
I thought that the TV show was, like, really good, really well done, Mike and I were super into it, and we were mad when that got canceled, it felt like such an interesting premise, such an interesting show, and it really does feel like Amazon doesn't know what kind of shows it wants, and, like, if a show maybe doesn't pop, like, the exact second they drop it, it's just like they're just like, "Okay, canceled." Because I feel like
Well,
Paper Girls was out for, like, 3 weeks before they canceled it.
100%, but I think the streaming in general these days, especially now with the, the strike going on, like there's I don't know what direction they're planning on going, but it's definitely not giving money to people and canceling shows.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they're definitely using the strike as, like, a justification to cancel things that they probably already wanted to cancel, but now they're like, "Well,
I
it's
mean, they
not
did it
our f"
once.
they're like, "It's not our fault this time." It's like, "Yeah, it's still your fault."
Yeah, like yeah, it's so interesting. And also like I don't even know what content. It's also so interesting because like what new shows Amazon got coming out? Like what's
That's
again?
yeah.
Mrs. Maisel's over. When's the boy? I think the boys. You have another season of Invincible. It's an animated show. It takes a while to
Yeah.
release. And then also, okay, and again, I like Invincible. I know I'm like dogging on Invincible for some reason. I love the comic. But they made an animated special for Adam Eve, like the character, just
Yeah.
randomly because they're like, we need content. Because they like people like this show so much, and we need like this random content. So you made an hour-long animated show, a special episode that doesn't progress the plot in any way, but you will not give 4 episodes to this other show.
I know. This thing is probably not that expensive. It'll endear you to fans that might decide to show up for your next show that you release. I don't know. It's very strange. Amazon, as out of all the streamers, Amazon feels to me like the one that, like, doesn't know what it wants, like, its streaming, like TV roster to be. Like it keeps like feels like it keeps sort of taking shots in the dark. They're like I feel like a couple years ago, they were like, let's put all the eggs in like a high fantasy basket. Like we're gonna chase after Game of Thrones. And I don't know that that's working out great for them. They don't promote Wheel of Time for very much for all of the
I didn't
money
know
I'm
that show
sure that they
existed until you guys told me it
Oh,
did.
and you probably wouldn't if we weren't fans, and,
Yeah,
to the point, I like to joke that, like, between season 1 and season 2, I have almost successfully read 13,000-page books. So that should give
crazy.
you an idea of how long it's been between the 2 seasons. I can only imagine how bad it's gonna be between season 3 now with the writer's strike. I'm just, like, never gonna see it.
No, I don't think you'll ever will see it. And it's interesting because it makes me curious to see again where streaming in general is going. Because I'm looking at, I mean, if you look at Netflix, like Stranger Things is never coming out. I mean, for that's never gonna come out. But yeah, like what's again, and obviously the strikes have a lot to do with it too, like what the future of streaming is gonna look like. But I think cable's coming back, man. I think the Golden Bachelor is gonna. Have you
The
heard about the
golden
Golden? Have you heard
I
about the Golden
I
Bachelor?
I watched a TikTok of, like, the Golden Bachelor's, like, granddaughter, introducing him, and I was like, "I don't know what's happening, and I'm sad that I'm probably gonna watch this." I feel
Yeah,
bad for myself, for my brain cells, the ones I have left, that I'm almost definitely gonna watch the this old guy look for love.
my parents love The Bachelor, so they are gonna
Oh
watch the
my
Golden
god.
Bachelor.
Please report back for
And
me.
oh, I will. I asked my mom, I'm like, "Do you think it's gonna just be old people, or you think like a 20, like it's gonna be all 20-year-olds?" She's like, "It's better not just be all 20-year-olds." I'm like, "You don't. That's like interesting." He's like, "No, it's gotta be old. Like they need to find love too."
It looks like they released some, like, pictures of the
Oh,
bachelorettes, I
did they?
guess, for the Golden Bachelor, and they all look age appropriate, but
Shocked.
I feel like to be funny, they should throw in, like, 2 25-year-olds just to test the Golden Bachelor. Be
That's what
like,
I want to
"What are
see
you
too.
actually looking for, sir?"
That's what I wanna see. That's what I thought they were gonna do, and maybe they still can. Maybe that's the twist of the season is there's a 25-year-old. But or maybe they're really like, "Alright, who's watching The Bachelor right now?" It probably is people that are a little older, and it's like it's a sliding scale. I think it's people that are in their 20s and people that are like 70 to 60 years old watching The Bachelor.
The
Because it's people
Bachelor
who only watch cable, like my
Bachelor
parents are watching
Nation,
it.
baby. Yeah, I've literally never, never watched like a full episode of The Bachelor on
Me
my
either.
own for whatever reason, which is not to say that I have good taste in TV. Like I am counting down the days until Love is Blind season whatever it is, season 4
Mm.
or season 5.
Already.
But yeah, so but I it does feel like I don't know what's going on with streaming. Obviously
What's
they're
going on
under
with TV? We
what's
got
going on with
the
TV in
Kitchen
general.
Nightmare. My friends have been watching, and I've now been watching because it has to be on the television every single time we hang out, is 90 Day Fiancé. I'm like,
Oh, I had a friend who, like, was recovering from something who ended up just binging 90 Day Fiancé and, like, went deep down a rabbit hole of 90 Day Fiancé, and I was like, I feel like that's, like, a line in the sand I have to keep for myself that, like, I
yeah,
can't get it because
too
they
much.
90 Day Fiancé, by the way, has, like, a whole, like, cinematic universe of
7 to 8
shows.
shows at the same
I
time.
can't do it. I can't do it's too much for me. I gotta step back.
And my friends, what's so interesting about it is that they like certain sections of it. They won't watch 90 Day Fiancé. They're watching like before the 90 days. And I'm like,
What?
what's the wait, what? And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna watch this one. I'm like, so you won't watch 90 Day Fiancé? It's like it's not as interesting. They're like, I want to see because 90 days like when they're like they know each other already. So like the before the 90 days,
Oh.
like they get to know each other and see if they want to be a thing. So 90 days, like it's not as interesting supposedly because they already are kind of a little bit committed. But then the marriage is even less interesting because they're too committed.
'Cause now they're
So
too committed. They're too committed. They're not gonna break up, like, at the drop of a hat anymore. It's not interesting.
So
Uh,
before the 90 days seems to be the sweet spot. I've
that's
watched some of
hilarious.
it and I cannot be invested.
I see Rachel says, "Okay, I'm completely wrong. Greta and Carson, has over 1,000 fics on AO3, while Max and Carson has 5."
That's
So,
sad because I felt for Max and
listen,
Carson. I
listen.
don't feel for Greta. I think she's a little bit too
Yeah,
much for me.
I think that's interesting. So I like let's talk about the characters that they introduced in this one, which is I think most of the characters, but there are quite a few. Obviously, it's a baseball team, so there's a lot
Is
of
it that
characters.
obvious?
Yeah, a little bit. That's I guess that's what we're talking about. But there's quite a few characters that they introduced, but there's like some big ones. So we talked a little bit about Max, who can't even
My
really try out
all-time
for the team.
favorite.
Max
She's
is great.
definitely my favorite character.
What did you think of, like, the other characters that they introduced in the pilot?
I really only like Max and her friend. Like, I really that's the only time I was, like, really invested in the show, where I was like, "Oh, Max is on, like, she has an interesting story," and then her friend was just, like, fun. And I liked her comic references, but, yeah, the others, I wanna like the main character, like, she was fine. I didn't I mean, I like Darcy Law as an actress, but I, I don't know, there's something about her that just wasn't that intriguing to me. Again, maybe it was the no conflict thing. Um and then the other characters were almost non-existent in the pilot.
That's true, yeah, like, you're introduced to a bunch of the characters, but it's maybe the problem is you're almost introduced to too many characters because 'cause
That you
you're
think some of them are sisters.
and you're yeah, and you're like, "Who's this one?" So, like, it's, Carson, who's played by Abby Jacobson, who's the main character, basically, along with Max.
Right.
And then Greta is played by Janet from The Good Place. And, then Greta's friend Jo, who is, like, kind of coming along with her to try out for the baseball team. And then there's Lupe, I believe, or yeah, I think that's what her name and then, Esty is the girl who can't speak English.
Okay.
And then there's, like I don't remember if what's her and now I can't
There's a
remember her
blonde
name.
girl.
There's a blonde girl who has, like, a very, like, a va va voom kind of
Mhm.
energy where she's, like, really dolled up. She's really fun, but you don't get a lot of her in the pilot. And then there's, like, another girl who's kind of like a hypochondriac almost. But I don't know that you even get a lot of her in the pilot. I think maybe I don't think that they're, like so they start, like, as the show goes on, they're rooming together and stuff like that,
Mhm.
but I don't even know do you get that in the pilot that they are all gonna end
Do
up
you
rooming?
get that they're yeah, you get that they're in a hotel together,
That's
or
right.
not a hotel, but, like, whatever,
Like
a
a kinda like a
dormitory.
boarding house, yeah,
Yeah.
with, like, uh, a chaperone. I
Yeah,
think
who
you get introduced to the
you
chaperone
do
in
get
the
introduced to
pilot,
her, and she
which is
wasn't that interesting to
it
me.
is a funny concept, though, that the idea that these, like, grown adult women need a
Need a
chaperone
chaperone. Why
to
not,
take care of
right?
them.
Who was, like, in the army or something?
Yeah, she had, like, a little army uniform on, like, the little hat and
Yeah.
everything. So did any of the characters really stand out to you in the pilot? It's hard for me now because I've watched, like, 7 in, like,
I
3 days, so
literally only Max. Yeah, I thought Max was the more clear-cut storyline because again she had more going on, she had a little bit more conflict. She's she wants to make her mom happy, but she wants to make herself happy. She has conflict with her friend because she seems to have a hot head. So I really liked her. I think she was really interesting. I think the Carson's character, she her biggest conflict here is that her husband is coming home and she doesn't want to see him. And I was like, all right. And that's really all the information you get. Like you could obviously by the end you're like, okay, you can tell that she's gay, but there just wasn't a lot of layers. There wasn't a lot there.
Yeah, I did like the scene when they're in the hotel, and they get her, like, the Carson and Greta get really drunk and write the letter to, Carson's husband, where they're, like, getting drunker and drunker and, like, pitching things back and forth, and you can tell
Mm,
that this letter is not a good idea to send, and then, like, she gives it to, like, the bellhop, and she's like, "Alright, make sure you send it," and then, like, doesn't remember what's in the letter in the morning. I thought that was, like, a fun sequence at least, like, where the show
right.
was, like I the one thing I do like about the show is that it feels even though it's a drama and there's, like, a lot of, like, dramatic things happening and, like, the time period is really harsh with these characters, there are, like, a lot of, like, moments of levity, especially with, like, Max and her friend who's always, like, drawing comics or, like, that whole sequence where they're getting drunker writing the letter, like, it does feel like it manages to balance the comedy and the drama pretty well.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with that for sure. And I know I feel like I'm dogging on this pilot. I don't think it was a bad pilot. I think when it comes to a pilot, I want to be completely sold. I want to be like, next episode, please, especially for streaming. I think it should be even more of like a cliffhanger where you're like, oh, I want to really see what happens next. And I think streaming has changed so much. Where I mean, if you think of the first streaming show, which is Orange is the New Black, that show is built on cliffhangers. Like it's like, oh my god, that just happened. I got to go to the next one, and it's such maybe one day we'll do Orange is the New Black as a pilot pod,
We
but
should.
it's such a pilot, right?
It it is.
It's such an HBO pilot. It really it reminds me of an HBO show, and I think that's what they took from it. They took a Mad Men, they took a Sopranos kind of take, and then they realized, oh, this is what streaming is, and now streaming pilots are so different because they are ordered for series, and it's just like this isn't a pilot, and that's what makes it so hard to talk about, but it makes it a little easier for you to talk about and enjoy because you watched a lot of it, and for me, I'm like, "Oh, did it give me enough to wanna watch the next episode?" As a sports fan, no. As a fan of queer relationships, yes and no, 'cause I wanna see the queer representation, but at the same time, I didn't even like the 2 leads that much. I didn't think their relationship was that interesting.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because we've done a couple of the pilot pods for a couple of these like streaming shows. And I think that, like, had I just watched the one episode and stopped, I would have had kind of like a similar, like, I would have had a similar point of view as you, where I would have been like, wasn't enough baseball in it. Like, I don't know about this character relationship. But because I went, like, all right, let's watch the next one. Like, that one was pretty good. Like, let's see what happens now. And then, like, watch them back to back to back, like in that binge model that this show was seems like it was built for. Like, I have like a more well-rounded view of the show. But, like, I think to your point, I agree that, like, as there's more competition for streaming shows, like, it feels like there's, like, a new one even during the writer strike, like, a new one's dropping, like, every week, somehow
Still is.
still. It's
The
you
Summer
would
I
think
Turned Pretty, I mean and also I guess that's on Amazon Prime, so there you go. That
that's on
they got
Amazon
that
Prime.
success.
They've got all kinds of Taylor Swift songs on that show, somehow.
I've
Uh,
heard.
but yeah, I think it's super interesting that you said the thing about cliffhangers, which is I agree. I don't think that, streaming shows do great cliffhangers anymore the way that they used to
Because
for
of
like
Stranger Things. Stranger
yeah,
Things don't have cliffhangers. They're just like, "You saw that monster? Don't you wanna
exactly.
see another?"
It's really funny because over on Supergirl Radio, we've been going through the animated My Adventures with Superman TV
Mhm.
show, and they have been ending their episodes on cliffhangers, and it
Interesting.
has been really weirdly, like, refreshing, like, it feels like an old style show where it's like, "Oh my god, like, tune back in next week because to find out what happens with this," and it's like, yeah, I just didn't realize how much I missed a good cliffhanger until I started watching something that, like, continuously has a good cliffhanger at the end of episodes that, like, will pull me back for more. Rachel in the chat agrees My Adventures with Superman is so good.
Yeah, no, I do miss a good cliffhanger. It's interesting because, like, obviously we like Harley Quinn a lot, and I've watched some of the episodes for this season so far, and that's a show not built on cliffhangers at all.
No.
It's a show that's so every episode it plays more as a sitcom. It's like every episode is its own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would actually almost agree that that's like the category that show is. I think it kind of just is a sitcom. It's more built for like the comedy and the jokes, I think, than necessarily like being like, "Oh, what's going to happen with this storyline?" It's like, "No, I just want to see what like Bane is up to."
Yeah, exactly, and obviously there's like a overall arc, and I'm trying to think of a show that has overall arcs for a whole season that's a comedy show.
It is harder. Yeah. Comedy shows like usually have like a very thin thing that's going on that season, but it's not necessarily an arc so much
Yeah, not to the
usually.
extent of Harley, because they got, like they have overall arcs for the season, but they just don't tackle them every episode, so it's
It's true, yeah,
interesting.
sometimes they'll have, like, a one-off where they, like, just go to a fancy party or something. I see a comment from Abby in the chat who says, "Not just cliffhangers, I've noticed episodes don't even end with characters sitting in their emotions either, like a lot used to do. Some things literally just end abruptly."
I was watching, the morning show, with my family before we went on here, and there was an episode, it they're we were in the middle of the episode, and they're all sitting in their feelings, and we're all like, "Is this the end of the episode? It just started." And then it wasn't the end, and then the end of the episode was so abrupt, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And what's interesting about, like, a morning show or a Ted Lasso is that that show airs on a weekly basis. It's a
Yeah,
streaming show, but it's not really a streaming show. So they just
yeah.
gotta like, let's do whatever. And I love that show. I think it's well written, but that one episode I was like, "Oh, that's interesting that they could
What
just
are
do
they
that."
doing? Yeah,
No.
I think it's really interesting, like, the streaming shows do feel a little bit different than, like, the old school network shows where, like, if somebody was, like, sitting and looking dramatically out a window and it was raining, like, you knew
It's
the
done.
episode was almost over.
Yeah, you knew
Now
you
it's
were
like,
get
"I don't know, we're 10 minutes in."
back in the CW days, you knew what was so interesting is that the
When they
first
had
6
those
weeks.
needle drops, that's when you knew it was the episode was almost over.
Hell
"Oh,
yeah.
One Republic is playing? It's, about time to move on."
They showed up in a whole episode, you know, the things are gonna hit the fan. But yeah, no, and also like what was interesting is that usually the first 15 minutes of the episode you have like full on story, and then the next 15 minutes full on story before the commercial. But then as you get to the end, those that time of content would be cut even shorter with the CW, where it'd be like, all right, 7 minutes now that you only have until the next commercial.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you don't get that anymore. You don't get like the you don't get the cuts. You don't get those act breaks.
No, not really. They don't really have to write to that structure so much anymore. Which is it can be good and bad. It depends on like what the show is, but there was something nice about that structure where, you know, it kept the momentum forward, I think, to a certain extent. Whereas some of the streaming shows and even honestly some of like the prestige cable shows, they'll be like, all right, I can't watch this man, like, look into an empty field for 5 minutes, like, I get it, he's conflicted, like, let us move on.
Seriously. No, it's true, and it'll be interesting to see where TV goes. I mean, we were talking about The Golden Bachelor, but there was a reason why we're talking about it. That's right now where
There's
because of the
not
strike.
I think we're gonna feel the repercussions of the strike or at least I think network is gonna feel the repercussions of the strike in a month or 2 when they don't
Yeah.
really have anything new to put on because, like, the streamers who are just as evil, by the way, at least, like, they tend to film, like, whole seasons and then wait to release them, especially if they're
And
releasing them in a binge
international stuff.
model. And they have international stuff, whereas, like, the traditional networks, they're gonna be really hurting for content. I think we're gonna see a lot of, like, stuff that was originally on streaming suddenly popping up
Oh, they're already doing that. Miss
on
Marvel is gonna be on ABC.
Oh my god, really?
Mhm.
That's too funny. Yeah, I think I also read somewhere that, like, Yellowstone, they might be, like, airing Yellowstone on, like,
Shocked.
one of those networks, yeah. So, yeah, I think we're gonna start to feel at least the networks are gonna start to feel the crunch of the writers and actors strike going on forever and ever. Maybe they'll be more likely to deal with them and give
See,
them
I don't
fair
what
terms.
what's interesting though is that and this is a whole different podcast, but I don't think network is the problem from what I can understand. It's like they're not the ones who are like,
No,
obviously,
it
they're
doesn't.
gonna get the ramifications, but they're not the ones
They're
that are
Yeah, I agree. It seems like they're gonna get the worst ramifications immediately, and potentially, they're not the biggest offenders in this
Mm,
whole thing. It's like it's the streamers who are I think I read some article where, somebody who was, like, on Orange Is the New Black overheard, somebody said talking about, like, the numbers that Orange Is the New Black was doing, like, in the beginning, like, in the first couple seasons where, like, it was being viewed, like, millions and millions of times, like, more than anything on network, and they were, like, making pennies in residuals, whereas
right.
if you were on a giant network show like Friends at the height of its
Mm,
popularity, you'd be making bank, whereas
right.
these people who are on these incredibly popular streaming shows who we don't really have access to their numbers, to their viewing figures, but maybe they're making, maybe they're getting, more eyeballs on them than like Friends was back in the day. They're probably making like $200 in residuals every now and then. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about network, going back to why, like, maybe they're not the biggest offenders, because they've already kinda had strikes to deal with stuff that had to do with network. So nothing's really I won't say nothing's changed in network, but you know, it's a pretty similar structure. It's just streaming that is a very different structure. It's changed a lot. Again, maybe I'm completely wrong with that, and if there's anyone that'll correct me, go ahead. But no, but that's what it seems like though. It's mostly streaming that's doing the mini rooms and not wanting to pay anybody.
Yeah.
And then
I
obviously
am
hiding their ratings because network still has the Nielsen ratings. So
They still have the Nielsen, so you have some idea, and arguably streaming should have a much better idea because they have the data of like you turned it on at this time and you finished it at this time and you watched
right,
these 5 episodes and then you waited 3 weeks and watched another one. Like they should have way better data that they're going off of, but they refuse to share that information unlike the Nielsen ratings which like just come out after a show goes on. So,
right.
yeah, it's crazy. But to get to pivot back to A League of Their Own,
A
I
league of
did
their own.
I did wanna ask you because you said that you were in I was shocked that you said you were actually interested in the time period. What
I
did
know.
you
I was
think
too.
of it? Because as I was watching the pilot a couple days ago, I was like, "I don't know. It's a time period show. I don't know how Kat's gonna like it."
I liked it because it wasn't, I think the history affected the characters, so I liked
Mhm.
it that it was more about the characters. It wasn't just like, "And this queen beheaded this queen," whatever, but, no, I think it played into yeah, it played into the story, so I think that's why I liked it.
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job with the time period and sort of using it to make some of the character relationships like more heightened and have more stakes where it's like, if it was a modern day retelling of A League of Their Own, if say Carson's character and Greta's character liked each other, it would, maybe not be that big of a deal, but back in
Right,
the 40s, like yeah, that's going to be dangerous.
yeah. No, and I think that made it, an interesting pilot to see, they didn't gloss over it, and I don't think it would have been as interesting of a show if they did gloss over it, because there's a lot of period pieces that tend to do that now.
Yeah, I agree, and it's like if you're gonna set something during a time period like that, I think you have to, or at least you should think about grappling with, like, what the reality was for the your characters who live there. So, like, yeah, Max can't just come on to the baseball team and try out and immediately get on the team. Like, yeah, they're just gonna be racist to her and throw her out.
Right.
Like, it sucks, but that was the time period. I saw a comment from Abby that you pulled up that says,
Yeah,
"Fun
it's a
fact,
fun one.
the scene where Carson meets Greta and Joe for the first time in Chicago was filmed in downtown LA, and I happened to be there right at the right time, right place, and got to watch them film it."
That's so fun.
That's so
That
cool.
that's always cool. I remember the first time that ever happened to me because again, when you live well, honestly, now they film in so many different places, but New York especially, like just growing up, there's always something going on. But I think the first time I ever saw anything like being filmed was I Am Legend, and there's like all this green stuff. We're like, whoa, this is good. Like, what the hell's going on here? And I think I was like, I don't know, I want to say eight or something when I saw that. I was like, oh, gotta go see I Am Legend. That's cool that they filmed it, and I never saw I Am Legend,
Did I
to
ever tell
this
you
day.
my World War Z story?
I don't
I
think
can't
so.
remember. I was in, Scotland on, like, vacation, like, on a tour, and we ended up in Glasgow, and I'm looking around, and there are all of these signs, like, these signs that say Philadelphia. Like, there's signs that say, like, Philadelphia Art Museum, and there's signs like,
Right.
the Philly license plates, and I was like, "Am I losing my mind? Did I go home?" I'm, like, looking around like, "What is happening?" And somebody was like, "Oh, yeah, they're filming that Brad Pitt movie, World War Z here, and they're pretending like Glasgow, Scotland is Philadelphia." And I was like, why would they not just film in Philadelphia? Like, I would think it would be cheaper to just film in Philadelphia than to like make Scotland look like Philadelphia. And they're like, oh no, I guess Scotland has like really good like filming subsidies or like
I'm pretty sure
tax
Philadelphia does
breaks
too.
or whatever. And I was like, okay. So I got to see a little bit of them film, like, they had all the roads, like, blocked off, but they were
Mm.
filming something, like, down one of the roads. We were, like, peering over, but I have really funny pictures of me, like, standing next to signs from Philadelphia, like, in Scotland being like, look at this."
That's so interesting and funny. I yeah, that's always amazing to me when, the tax breaks are always an interesting thing in that regard where you're like, you would think Philadelphia would, like you said, would
Right?
have filmed it.
Abby said, "My friend and I were walking down the street, and everything started turning into the 40s with picture cars and store decals, and we were afraid we actually walked onto the set." Yeah, that was like the
So
same
funny.
situation I had where I was like walking down down like a street in Scotland, and I look over and like all this stuff says Philadelphia, and I was like, wait a minute, what's going on?"
Anytime you see those, like, yellow plastic signs, you know they're filming somewhere,
Yeah,
so it
then
just
you
to give
know
you
something's going on.
you're like, "Oh, wait," and they got like, there's a distinct sign that you'll be like, "Oh, yeah, they're filming in this area."
I think, was there anything else that we wanted to talk about with League of Their Own?
Well, I guess just the big question, did you like the pilot?
Yeah. I guess for me, yeah, I did. I wouldn't would I say it works, like, as a great pilot? I don't know. Maybe not. Like, I do feel like it was kind of missing a little bit of, like, what the heart of the show is, which is more of the baseball. But
Mhm.
in terms of, like, getting me to watch episode 2, it did that
Worked out.
successfully. So, yeah.
Um, I think it was an okay pilot for me. I think it would I if someone said, "Cat, it gets so much better, like, you gotta watch more." I probably wouldn't watch it because I don't watch anything, but if I watched live television, I would
Yeah.
probably continue to watch it. I didn't hate the watch by any means.
Yeah, I mean, that was gonna be my second question is would you watch more? I think, my answer is already yes, I'm almost done the first and maybe only season, question mark, question mark. But yeah, I watched the first episode and I was like, "All right, like, let's see what's going on in episode 2," and, like, before I know it, it was, like, a couple days later and I'd watched 7, so
There you go.
but, if you ever get some spare time and wanna get to the actual baseball, maybe put on episode 2.
I think I'd put it honest if I'm being completely honest, I think I'd put on the movie before I put on episode 2.
You
Yeah.
honestly, you do need to watch the movie, like, yeah,
Yeah.
if you were like, listen, I'll either watch episode 2 or the movie. I would tell you to watch the movie. Like, that's a big
Yeah.
gap in your cultural knowledge.
I think it is too. I think that's and it looks up my speed, even though it's not gay. I think this does have the added addition that it's gay.
It
Um,
does.
but there's gay people in it in the movie. I actually forgot that Madonna and Rosie O'Donnell, they're like best friends, and now I just put two and two together. It's because of that movie.
Oh my god, you're right.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, they're in that movie
I always
together.
kind of forget that Madonna was in that movie because it just seems so strange that Madonna would be in like a major movie. I
Right,
guess
in a
she the
baseball movie.
yeah, in a baseball movie. She did have that, like, period of time when she was acting a lot, and then she
Uh-huh.
kinda stopped doing that, but,
Wasn't her
this is
passion.
this was during that time. This and she was good if I remember right, she was pretty good in it, so maybe
You know,
Madonna just
I'll
needs to
watch for
be in a new
Madonna.
baseball movie. I will say Rosie O'Donnell was in, League of Their Own.
On this one?
She pops
Oh,
up for, like, 1 episode.
interesting.
It's not, like, a big
That's
she
still
wasn't
interesting.
yeah, she wasn't showing up for a ton of for a ton of episodes. But I do think that the show, it does get gayer as it goes along,
Okay.
I will give you
I
that.
mean, it's pretty gay in this
It's
episode,
pretty
so
gay in episode 1, so if you can imagine it getting much, much gayer, it's like you find out that more of the characters on the baseball team are
well, like you said,
queer.
all of them.
Unsurprisingly, there are trans characters. There's, like
Oh, that's
they go
cool.
to, yeah, it's really cool how they do it. They go to, like, an old-timey gay bar that they have to get into by password, so that's really neat, and that's, like, where you meet, like, the Rosie O'Donnell character. She's, like, the one who, like, is
Okay.
running the gay bar. So stuff like that is really cool and kinda gives you a sense of, like, the time and place and also, like, the stakes of what it was like to be queer back in, like, the '40s where, like, there were still these places of community that people got
Mhm.
together, but it was not without risks. Like, it was
Right.
risky to be, like, publicly queer.
Yeah. And I think again, that's what I appreciate about the show is that they're not glossing over that. So, um, yeah, we'll maybe we'll do something related to this again. But I have a feeling it'll be the movie because I think that'd be kind of a cool follow up to this podcast. And
I think that'd be
we're
fun because I don't know if I would be curious if Amy has seen the movie.
yeah, I don't know. That'd be interesting too. I don't think she would have, if I had
Yeah.
to guess.
I
Also,
feel like
it was a
if I
little
had to guess,
before
yeah.
my time.
Yeah, because I when did the
I'm looking
when
up
did the
now.
League
In
movie come out?
1992, I wasn't even born yet. So,
Oh my gosh, 92. I knew it came out I knew it was, like, also a little bit before my time as well, like, I was,
mm,
like, little, when it came out, so I remember watching it when I was, like, a little kid and then, like, a bunch more as I, like, got
right.
older because it was, like, a big movie that everybody watched all the time.
Yeah. No, it wasn't in my generation. Like, it's definitely a popular movie, but it wasn't one that I was like, oh, gotta watch a League of Their Own. Um, wasn't the Mean Girls of the generation, that's for sure. But yeah, we let us know in the comments below what you guys want to see from us because we have a good plan for October and we're trying to fill up our September a bit. But also tell us what duo episodes you want to see because there might
Yes.
be a lot of duo episodes coming up because of our scheduling here.
Yeah, there's a lot of traveling and, plays and things like that, so we need to figure out some scheduling, so if there's, something you've desperately been wanting us to cover or talk about, now is the time. Now is the
Yeah,
time to get those suggestions in.
please
And
do.
you can do that by sending them to, thelegendaryladies@gmail.com. You could tweet them at us at legends_podcast. You can find us on Instagram. We're at the Legendary Ladies. You can find us on YouTube where we are posting the streams of our podcasts. That's youtube.com/, I think it's at the Legendary Ladies. I don't know what YouTube is doing with their URLs anymore. Um, you can find us on all those we're also on TikTok. I believe we're Legendary Ladies Pod over there. So you can find us on all of those places. And in all those places, there's comments that you can leave telling us what you want us to see. To talk about. I
Owl
see that
House was
Rachel
one. Phil mentioned the
mentions
Owl House story from last episode.
Yeah, yeah, maybe we did a Dragon Prince, episode,
Yeah.
Amy and I, a couple weeks ago, so maybe Owl House needs to go into it. Maybe we'll do some animated, pilot pods.
Yeah, that'd be fun. When I watched I forget if it was mentioned in this podcast, but if it was, I'm gonna repeat the story. But when I watched the Owl House for the first time, uh, Phil and Julia showed it to me, and I didn't really look up from my phone. And there's this character that talks, but he doesn't move his mouth. So, and he's like a dog type character. And in the end of the episode, I was like, he talks, and they're looking at me like he's been talking the whole time. It's
That's
he's
so
like we've been
funny.
watching this for 30 minutes. So it's a little running joke that they all have for me. Like he talks.
So Kat, what are you up to now? Where can people find you? Is there anything that they can support?
So I think it's gonna be over by now, but we have Beast and Snow that just is ending, which it did really well, and we are very happy with it. That's our not safe for work werewolf, Snow White, vampire, Beauty and the Beast book. So go check that out. And then in 2 weeks, I am gonna have a Kickstarter for The Dancer. It's the last issue of the book. It is about a dancer slash assassin. So hopefully, you guys go check
Ooh.
that out. And we always got stuff going on. We're gonna have a cool announcement next week about a new anthology. So look forward to that.
Ooh.
I know. So we're keeping ourselves busy. So at Comic Gano, for all the latest news.
Awesome. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Mojotastic, and you can find me as a co-host on Supergirl Radio, where we're just about to wrap up our season 1 for My Adventures with Superman, the animated show on. I keep wanting to say HBO Max, but I guess it's just Max now. So
You could say HBO Max. We all do.
So if you want to stop by, we'll be talking about the finale next week on Tuesdays at 9 Eastern Standard Time. So drop by and say hi.
All right, cool, and stay legendary.